I'm Dr. Hendricks. I'm going to do this video on measurement and introduce you to measurement, the prefixes, and the units that we use for measurement. All right, let me pull it up here. All right, so when we measure anything, we have to have a number and a unit with it. So later we'll talk about the number part and how to correctly do that. But now we're going to look at the units. Okay, so if you were to say, I ran a 100-meter dash in 10, okay, and you didn't tell me anything after that. Well, 10 what? 10 minutes, 10 seconds, 10 hours? Okay, that unit tells everything, right? Okay, just like if you say there's an aspirin, the dosage is 325. Okay, well, 325 pounds, 325 milligrams. Okay, obviously it'd be more like milligrams. Okay, but that you get the idea. So unless you report that unit, that number means nothing when you measure something. So we use the metric system, and so we have a base unit that we use for each quantity. Okay, so if you look at this table here, for length we use the meter, which is lowercase m, and there's its symbol. The mass, the gram. When volume, we use a liter, and time, we use seconds. Okay, so these are going to be the base units that you're going to see. Okay. With those base units, we have units that are related by a power of 10 to these. And so if you know prefixes to these units, then you know a lot about the number that's being represented or about that unit. Okay, the prefix of the unit indicates if it's larger or smaller than the base unit. All right, so we're going to look at these individually because you're going to really want to know these. Some of these you're probably very familiar with just from everyday life things. So, but the prefix giga means a billion. So that means you have a billion times. So right now I'm going to use the base unit. So if we go back over here, I'm just going to pick the meter since it's first. So we're going to pretend we're talking about meters, okay? But you could use all of these different quantities. All right, so giga means a billion. So that means I have a billion meters, okay? So 10 to the 9th power. Okay, mega is always a million. So if you have a megameter, you have a million times a meter. Okay, kilometer, most all of you've heard that before. Okay, kilo is 1,000 times. So if I have a kilometer, I have 1,000 meters. Okay, deci, okay, so a decimeter is a tenth. Okay, so now you're looking at it being smaller. Okay, then centimeter, most all of you, or every one of you have heard of a centimeter. Okay, and it means that you have 100th of a meter. Okay, millimeter, okay, we use lots of millimeters, milliliters in chemistry. Okay, it is 100th. So if you have a millimeter, it's 100th of a meter. Okay, micro, so it's a really small number, and it's going to be a millionth of a meter, or whatever our base unit is. And then nano is a billionth. Okay, so a billionth of a meter. So that's really, really, really small numbers. So see how your numbers here are negative powers. So that means that they're smaller than the base unit, and these are really large numbers there. So the base unit of length, whoops, I knew that was, okay, I thought I did mass first, but here's length, is meter. So that's what we just talked about. So 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. So you could say there are 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer. So these are what we call conversion factors. We'll use these later. Or unit factors. Okay, and we'll use these as we convert from one unit to another later. All right, milli means 1,000th. So if you look here, then you have, in 1 milliliter is 0.001 meters. Okay, so you would have to have 1,000 millimeters to equal 1 meter. That's another way to look at it. 1 meter equals 1,000 millimeters. Okay, centi or centimeter is 100th. So there's your 1 centimeter is equal to 0.01 meters. Okay, or we could say 1 centimeter, or, well, another way to say this would be that if we have, then we'd have to have 100 centimeters in 1 meter. Mass is a measure of the amount of matter in an object, okay? And weight is different. So we use these two terms, mass and weight, interchangeably, but in fact they are different. So mass is the actual matter and amount that's in an object. So it doesn't matter whether you're on Earth or at Mars or you're on the moon, your mass is always the same. Okay, and so this is measured by balance. Okay, so we have balances in the lab, and they counteract for gravitational pull. Okay, and so if you put an object on a balance, you're getting its mass. So when you go to a balance in a laboratory or use one on a virtual lab, either way, when you place an object on a balance, these are pretty expensive instruments because they measure the true mass. Okay, it doesn't matter with gravitational pull. Okay, and so you should say that the mass of the object is, whatever, 3 grams or whatever it is, because you're measuring it on a balance. Okay, for weight, this is just on a scale. So if you get up in the morning and you weigh yourself, then you're actually feeling the force of matter due to gravity. And so you are going to weigh different on the moon or Mars versus your weight on Earth. Okay, and so it's just measuring that gravitational pull. So weight is different than mass. All right, so mass is the base unit's gram. All right, so 1 kilogram, there's 1,000 grams. Okay, and 1 milligram, so these are just examples like we did earlier. Okay, and a milligram is 1,000th. So you have 1,000th of a gram in a milligram. Okay, or it would take 1,000 milligrams to equal 1 gram. So depending on which way you look at it. Okay, and if you have, it takes 1,000 grams to equal 1 kilogram. All right, volume is measured in liters. Okay, and so if we have a kiloliter, we have 1,000 times a liter. Milliliter would be 1,000th of a liter, just like we saw before. Volume is also the measure of length times width times height. Okay, and so if you had, for instance, you measured this in centimeters, you would get centimeters cubed. So that is another unit for volume. Okay, and so this right here is important. So 1 milliliter is equal to 1 centimeter cubed, and also 1 cc. Okay, 1 cc is centimeter cubed. Okay, these two are exactly the same thing. All right, but these are all interconverted and used, whether it can be milliliters, centimeters, or cc. Okay, centimeters cubed. Okay, so we can use these units and metric equivalents, and we come up with what we call common conversion factors, or unit factors. And you can find these on the internet, in every chemistry book, you name it, you can find it. Some of these you probably already know. Okay, for instance, 12 inches and 1 foot, okay, or 3 feet in a yard. Okay, so we have common units for length, for mass, and for volume. Okay, and we're going to learn how to use these later and how we can convert from one unit to another. Okay, you've probably done this before. If you measured something in inches and you wanted to know, well, how many feet did I measure? Okay, you may have just done it in your head. Okay, but you use these factors to figure that out. Okay, and so we're just going to take these a step further and convert from one unit to another later. All right, so for right now, I just want you to understand from this video what those prefixes mean, what your base units are, and get used to those and using them and hearing those prefixes to give you an idea about the size, okay, or the quantity that you are looking at, okay, because all of our chemistry units, all of our chemistry numbers need a unit, okay. So if we look at what term is used for 1,000th of a second, okay, so if we go back, so you may already know this one, but if you look back at our prefix table here, okay, and you go down and you look at 1,000th, okay, that is milli, okay, so there's 1,000 milliseconds in a second, okay, and so our answer here, right, we would put millisecond. Okay, what term would we use for 0.01 grams? So that's 100th of a gram. Okay, so hopefully you remember, but if not, sorry, we're going to keep flipping back here. Oops. Okay, so 100th is centi. So we would put, our answer here would be centigram. Okay, number 3 is pretty easy, but just trying to get you an idea of thinking of these prefixes. If you have 5 kilometers versus 5 centimeters, which one's bigger? Okay, this is just kind of trying to make common sense of this. So a kilometer is 1,000 times, right? Whereas centi is a hundredth. Okay, 100th, not 100 times. Okay, and so this is 1,000 times a meter. So obviously it's much larger than centimeters. Okay, 5 centimeters versus 5 kilometers. Okay, how many nanometers are there in 1 meter? Okay, so if you didn't remember the prefix nano, that was one of the last ones we looked at. Okay, it means a billionth, so really small. Move that decimal place over and over and over 9 times. Okay, and so the question asks, how many nanometers would you need in a meter? Okay, so you would have 1 billion nanometers to equal 1 meter. All right, I hope you better understand the metric system and the units, and we will further use these later in some other videos. I'll see you soon.